world. But welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time during your afternoon, your morning, your night, the middle of the night to be able to attend this session with us here today. We really do appreciate your presence, and we also wish everyone well in the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the unfortunate natural disasters that are still taking place around the world right now, and also all the injustices that unfortunately still continue to come to light in the country, even though there aren't anything that's new, unfortunately. But we hope everyone's staying well, and we hope we can provide you some more information from Northwestern. In case you were curious where you were in the digital landscape, you are virtually at Northwestern, and I'll take the time to introduce myself now. So my name is Mauricio Gonzalez. I'm an assistant director of undergraduate admission at Northwestern. I also am very proud to call myself an alum. I graduated with my degree in psychology from the College of Arts and Sciences at Northwestern and a certificate in integrated marketing communications from our School of Journalism here as well. I also am from the proud city of Chicago. I use he, him pronouns, and I also oversee our communications efforts, some of them at least in our office and our social media channels, which is why I'm here today to chat with a wonderful panel of guests about the many different ways that we academically support our undergraduate students at Northwestern. So now I'll take the time to introduce them. Since we're sort of going in this order already, Liz, do you want to take the opportunity to introduce yourself, and then Jacob, and then Una, and then Jill?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Liz Trubey. I am the Assistant Dean for Academic Advising in the Weinberg College of Arts and Sciences. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk with you about academic advising at Northwestern.
Okay, Jacob, take us away. Thank you, Liz.
My name is Jacob Kurian. I'm a current fourth year student at Northwestern studying biomedical engineering. I'm hoping to get my master's in mechanical engineering as well. I served on the board of directors for peer advisors, which is through the New Student Family Programs Department. So I'll be talking a little bit about that and supporting students academically.
Thanks, Jacob. Una, do you also want to take the time to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Una McGeough. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a program manager in the Office of Academic Support and Learning Advancement. And I'm looking forward to talking with all of you today about the services we offer.
Thanks, Una. And then our last but equally as important star, Jill, do you want to take the time to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, all. My name is Jill Schneider. I'm the Associate Dean of Students under Student Affairs here at Northwestern, and I'm also the Director of AccessibleNU. So I'm here to speak on behalf of AccessibleNU here today. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I have a very random question before we do begin that has nothing to do with the programming here today. Liz, what is that? That's a shot of campus, right? Where is that?
So this is facing University Hall, kind of from Sheridan Road. I took this picture last fall. It had snowed a tiny little bit and everything was super duper sparkly. And this is, it's my one fall picture of campus that I have.
Amazing. I love it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it kind of looks like you're in the middle of a forest, which I really enjoy. I wish I was in one right now hosting this, but Chicago will do and my apartment will do in the meantime. Anyway, getting back to our programming, thank you for humoring me in that. You'll be hearing a little more from each of these wonderful departments that we have here today. And I also did want to mention that this video will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel within 48 hours. And for those who would like and are in need of closed captioning, that also will be published along with the video once we are done recording this here today. So I just wanted to help plug that for anyone who would like those options and would like to watch this in the aftermath of everything going on. So we'll be taking the first half to talk a little bit more and hear from our wonderful representatives here. The second half will really be asking you to take the time to answer any and all the questions you have related to academic support. I'm really grateful for each of these departments here. I worked in youth student family programs for quite some time during undergrad, so I love that office, but I equally love all the other offices represented here. As a Northwestern student, I was supported by them very much so during my time, and I'm very grateful that they're here to chat a little bit more with us about the different ways that they bring life to the student experience academically. So Liz, I asked you a question about your background in terms of the Zoom world, but I want to know more about what your office does to students and what you do to support students academically.
Sure, happy to talk about that. Thank you. I just want to start by saying I realize now I have been at Northwestern in one way or another since 1995. So for those of you who are applying, this is long before you were born, which I have to deal with. But I came to Northwestern for graduate school, and it is such a special place that it became where I work, it became what I do in the world. And, part of why I think Northwestern is such a special place, the kind of place you want to stay for 25 years, is because we put so much emphasis on fostering student success, on fostering relationships between students and their advisors and their faculty, between helping our students really think critically about why they are here and what they want to do and how they can do it as well as possible. So I'm going to talk very broadly about academic advising because there are a lot of different components of it depending on what undergraduate school you're in, depending on what your interests are. So I'm going to try and do a broad swath here. But no matter what school you're in, no matter what your interests are, academic advising is absolutely a key component to student success at Northwestern. And all of us who engage in this work really think that it is through having conversations about who you are as a student, what you want to do, thinking critically about your plans, your goals, your interests, your values, and then taking those conversations and putting them in the context of the intellectual work that you're doing as a student. That is how you make Northwestern yours. That is how you go from being student number 75 in a certain class to being Jill, right? That you make this university yours. And so the way this works, every school is going to have a slightly different variation on this, but generally all of our undergraduates have a school advisor who's going to work with them over the long term. That school advisor is there to do all of the big picture conversations that you're going to have. So how do you choose a major? How do you do academic planning? How do you study abroad? How do you get involved in research, find opportunities on campus? What do you do when good things are happening? What do you do when maybe not so good things are happening? What do you do when you have no idea what is happening? Which for a lot of our students is a lot of the time, and that's okay. So your school level advisor is going to be kind of your person who's there to help you sort through all of these big existential questions. The way I put it is, my background is in literature, but I want my advisees to pay the same kind of attention to their own goals as a student as they would to the nuances of a text that they're studying in my class, right? How do you get there? What does it mean? How do you read yourself in this context? In addition to the kind of big picture advising at the school level, departments and programs have major and minor advising around certificates. All of our various academic programs, we call them, are going to have specialized advising. So How do I get started in my biological sciences major? How do I know who is doing research in economics that's similar to my interests? What if I want to switch from Weinberg to CESB? What is CESB? How do I do that, right? And so we have department advisors who are your specialists, right? They're there to make sure that you're going to have your questions answered about your major or minor, understand what it means to major or minor in something, and find a specific pathway through those set of courses that are as resonant for you as possible. In Weinberg, we do something that I think is pretty special, so I'm going to put in a little plug for it. In Weinberg, all of our incoming students take what we're calling a college seminar in their first quarter here. These are small 15-person discussion-based classes, and the person who teaches that fall, your college seminar in the fall, is your academic advisor for your first quarter at Northwestern. And we do this because we want you to have as little of a gap between you and your advisor as possible. You know, it's 15 students, you're meeting in class 2 or 3 times a week. This is somebody a faculty member who you really have the opportunity to get to know, who really gets to know you as a student and a human being. And they're there to help you think about the transition from high school to college. Think about how to get started. Learn about strategies for success as a student academically, as a student personally, as a human being who's starting to get, kind of do work in a more independent setting. How to clarify your academic plans. In Weinberg, our students come in without a major declared. That's not true in all of the other schools, or in all of the other schools, I should say. So how do you go from, I always liked math, to deciding what sort of quantitative major you might want to do? And that process in Weinberg starts in that fall seminar advising relationship. The other undergraduate schools have their own versions of first year advising and first year programming. It's not that they don't care about this stuff. Engineering has a first year advising program. Other schools do other workshops and things or have their advisors work with their first year students on these things as well. It's just, I wanted to give a shout out to that program. We also have a number of specialist advising offices on campus that go beyond sort of broad school and department advising. So we have a health professions advising office. We have a career advancement office that helps students who are thinking about professional directions. We have the Office of Fellowships, the Office of Undergraduate Research, the Office of International Students or Scholars and Students provides advising. Student athletes have an advisor who's connected to athletics. I could go on. You get the idea. Basically, there is a gigantic network of super duper helpful people who are here to help you find resources and opportunities on campus, to find support when you need it, to give you an advocate, to help you deal with challenges and opportunities that come your way. Everybody at Northwestern, every undergraduate at Northwestern has a person in their dean's office who knows who they are. And I think that's a pretty extraordinary thing. And what I tell students all the time, and I'll just wrap up with this, is help is everywhere at Northwestern. All students have to do is ask or respond when we reach out. I've never experienced a place that is so focused on making sure that students are supported as they move through their time. So I will stop here so we can make sure everybody has enough time to tell you about their wonderful offices, but that's advising at Northwestern.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. And I do really resonate with everything that you did share, especially that last part. I think for me as an undergrad, I didn't really realize, everyone told me, as for my peer advisor, which spoiler alert, Jacob will talk a little bit more about those wonderful people and his experience being a peer advisor in a couple of seconds. I had always been told there's such great support systems and great advisors that we have all across universities. Liz mentioned that for each academic program, you're part of a major certificate, an advisor for research, for any additional academic support or social support that you need. That really does exist. And I'm really grateful for those advisors, both represented here by y'all and those represented across the university, because Northwestern can be an academically and even socially challenging place at times, but it really is the community of collaboration and support and the systems that we have and people that we have that make it so great and a wonderful experience to be able to persevere and thrive at a place like Northwestern. Jacob, I know that you are the resident expert when it comes to this. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the oh so famous, oh so wonderful, my favorite people on campus, peer advisors, when it comes to academic support and beyond? What does that look like, that peer-to-peer support for Northwestern students?
Yeah, definitely. So just to kind of give some background, as the director for McCormick, I kind of just worked with new student family programs and the professional staff within the McCormick office to kind of make sure that our students are supported both through Wildcat Welcome and then after, as they're kind of getting involved in classes and McCormick specific stuff as well. So that's kind of the lens that I'm coming at it from. But I can totally speak to the role of just NSFP as well as peer advisors and kind of supporting these new students as they're transitioning from high school or their transfer school as well. And so just to kind of give you a rundown of how NSFP and peer advisors function. So incoming students are assigned to a PA group within the same school, often within the same major, especially for some of those smaller schools like Beanan or School of Comm. And so it's like a group of 10 to 15 students, and then they get assigned a peer advisor. And this peer advisor is essentially just their first connection point. You get about a very eager couple of emails saying like, hi, my name is Jacob. I'm going to be your peer advisor this coming year. And so you get a nice introduction to just like having a point of contact, which I think is huge. And just like the emphasis of having like both that peer aspect as well as like an advisor. And so throughout Wildcat Welcome and just obviously throughout the year, the peer advisor kind of just goes through and shows new students everything from like where buildings are to resources on campus. So it's a very wide net that we're casting. And so kind of to hit on the academic support ideas, like those resources that were talked about, as well as are going to be talked about later in this little show that we have going. But yeah, so essentially we'll show you the ropes and help out with classes, registration. But the biggest thing, like I said, is kind of being that resource connector. So like Liz said, there's so many and amazing offices and like mentors ready to help at Northwestern. It's just sometimes hard to know, where do I go? And so the role of the peer advisor is really trying to just be knowledgeable about all of those academic and other support areas and offices on campus. And so when a student comes to their peer advisor and says, hey, I think that I could really benefit from some extra help in chem. And so, and I was there, trust me, been there, definitely needed that as well. And so the peer advisor kind of just like based on their training that we do during spring as well as right before Wildcat Welcome, we're kind of given crash courses of like a bunch of campus resources. And so by having that kind of like information Rolodex, we're able to kind of just provide information for these new students. And so that kind of has been the big thing of just being that resource connector and saying like, oh, try drop-in tutoring or peer-guided study groups, which also huge advocate for. But yeah, so in terms of academic support, just making sure that they're aware of all of those and just also just giving advice on like what worked for them. Because like I said, a lot of your peer advisors are going to have the same school, or all of your peer advisors are going to have the same school, at least as you come into Northwestern, which you applied to. But they can also help with transferring, which I'll get to in a little bit. And so they just are able to kind of help with you with classes. Like I know so I was a PA for 2 years before being on the board of directors. So as the time for when I was a PA, like just being kind of supplemental to their academic advisors that they have within their school. So for instance, for McCormick, just working, and because obviously the academic advisors have a huge Rolodex of information as well. But sometimes it's a little bit more approachable to go to a peer. So that's kind of what we are there for. And so during Wildcat Welcome, we'll help with scheduling. So I remember being a freshman and just being super disoriented of classes. What is Caesar? Like, what is a shopping cart? And why are my classes going into that shopping cart? And so just having someone to ask questions, giving advice on like professors and just like classes, like, oh, if you're interested in learning kind of like the intersection of language and society, like maybe take a linguistics class. And so that's been kind of just that role, adding and dropping classes. Also just helpful to know that someone has gone through like a similar academic experience, which is always helpful to kind of just have that knowledge of like, hey, yeah, I haven't done great as well as I wanted to on a test before. And like, here's what I did to kind of improve that. And like, here's what worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe parts of it will. You can take those portions as well. And so obviously we might not know exactly, as like a big thing in NSFP is like every transition is different. So my transition obviously will not look the same as any of my new students. But it's always nice to have at least someone to go to. And I think that's kind of like the part of the peer advisors, kind of being that cheerleader, being like that resource connector, and just saying like, hey, whatever you choose to do, whether that be transfer out of your school or switch major. I switched my major from chemical engineering to biomedical engineering, and just kind of like being able to like help students go through that transition as well. So we might not know all the answers, but our whole orientation is trying to get them to someone or an office or resource that does have that information. So that's kind of how we support students as peer advisors through NSFP.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob. And when it comes to needing support in chem, I've been there. I came in as a chem major at Northwestern. That turned out to not be my jam, but that is okay. You know, I learned through our different advisors and my peer advisors and everything in terms of finding my own path and navigating my own transition into Northwestern, that I was more passionate about psychology and everything along these lines. And that's something that I'm so passionate about. I just wanted to like add that. I'm like, yep, I've been there. It happens. It's all right. But I do, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more. I know that obviously peer advisors do so much as well. And I'm really grateful for those people on campus. And I think it's really nice to have that advocate for you who will work alongside with you for your entire first year experience, rather than just that, you know, orientation week. And although that's not how we refer to it at Northwestern. So I'm really grateful. I just wanted to shout it out. Again, I'm very biased. I love all of y'all here on this call, but I'm very biased because I worked in youth student family programs, was a peer advisor myself in my day in undergrad. So here we are. Thank you so much, Jacob. So Una, we're gonna talk a little bit more about some more peer-to-peer initiatives that we have at Northwestern and staff members that we have in terms of the services that you provide. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you and your office do here at Northwestern?
Thank you. I'd love to. As you can hear already, there are some common themes of support and reaching out across different parts of the university. And I think that is, as Liz said, really a wonderful quality about Northwestern. My office is called Academic Support and Learning Advancement, and we have a little tagline that we put on a lot of our materials, which is "Success is not a solo endeavor." And we really believe that. A lot of the time, students can arrive at Northwestern feeling like I've got to do this all by myself, and that's part of proving what a great student I am. And we actually have a counter narrative to that. We truly believe that the best learners seek support and they also give support. And that is the basis of how our programs are structured. So to give you a big picture first, our focus is really on cultivating settings and situations where students can learn deeply. We're not about cramming for that test. We're not about trying to make sure that you have the best possible GPA, although of course that will be a lovely byproduct of participating in some of our programming. But instead, we're here to help you think about how you can become a better learner, because really that's what coming to Northwestern and going to whatever university you choose is all about. The other principle that we really espouse is collaboration, learning with others. You learn better when you learn with others. And that principle, undergirds all of our programming. So to get into what that type of programming is, we essentially have two buckets, what we refer to as course-specific support and what we refer to as general academic strategies. So in our course-specific programming, we have specific programs that support approximately 30 courses at Northwestern. These are largely first and second year courses. They are a huge number of the STEM courses that first and second year students take, as well as, I'm speaking to chemistry here, as has been referenced already, but not just chemistry, we go beyond chemistry, and then we have some social sciences courses that we support as well. And we do that through peer-guided study groups, which I think you heard Jacob mention, and drop-in tutoring. Both of those are programs that you can sign up for or participate in if you are taking any of those 30 courses. Peer-guided study groups are a standing commitment that you are part of all quarter long. It's a small group learning environment. It is led by a student who has taken that course. They've done well in the course, and then they've been selected by my office. We have interviewed these students, we've trained them to be effective communicators and facilitators of learning, and then they work with a group of students, usually anywhere from 5 to 8 students in a peer-guided study group. We also have drop-in tutoring, which of course, as it sounds like, is drop-in. It's very flexible. You don't have to commit to it for the whole quarter, but it's there when you need it. And again, this tutoring is done by peers who've taken the course, they've done well in the course, and they are there to help you also do well in that course. The setting, it's not a one-on-one tutoring environment, so it's a little bit different from what most people think of when they think about tutoring. Instead, it usually works out to be small group tutoring. At every tutoring session, we have multiple tutors for every subject that is being offered. And students can work together, they can come with their questions, they can come with a friend and their homework with no questions at all and just listen to the conversation going on around you, because sometimes you don't even know what your questions are until you hear somebody else ask it. And sometimes you don't realize how much you know until you realize that you can explain one of the answers to somebody else, and while you're being tutored on a different concept. And that's what we mean about collaboration and how the best learning happens with others. There's nothing like explaining a concept to somebody else to make you understand it more deeply. And sometimes a student can explain a concept in a way that is more accessible and understandable to you than perhaps your professor or TA did. We really encourage that the idea that you can learn from multiple sources and hearing from different people is really beneficial. As Jacob mentioned too, these tutors and study group facilitators don't just help you with your chemistry or calculus or econ, they also can offer insights into what other classes you might be thinking about taking or how one major compares to another. And they really become a mentor for you. One of the reasons we have all of our programming led by peers is we just see so much benefit in hearing from a student who knows what it's like to be in your shoes and can help, reassure you that, yes, this chemistry class is really difficult, but you will get through it. Here are some of the ways I got through it. And I think that's been instrumental in a lot of students, navigating their way through Northwestern. And the other bucket of programs,
sorry, go ahead. No, take your time.
I just took a breath.
Amazing, as you should. Keep going.
So our other bucket of programs is more broad and sweeping. It's where we talk about really how to be a better learner, how to be an effective student. And it's about rethinking maybe old habits that worked for you in high school but don't work as well at Northwestern. It can be things from time management to how to cure yourself of that procrastination habit, to thinking about more effective ways to read and prepare for quizzes. And we offer support in that domain in a couple of different ways. We have one-on-one individualized peer academic coaching. We also have what we think of as small group coaching, a small program where, like the peer guided study groups, you meet with a small group for a whole quarter once a week. And you talk about various strategies for being an effective student. How do I reach out to professors? What should I say when I go to office hours? How can I get a research internship? I know there are resources all over campus, but which ones should I use? Because I'm not even sure where to start. There's so many questions that can help you navigate Northwestern more successfully. In addition to those two programs, we also offer a variety of workshops and panels. We try to bring faculty and staff to you from different offices around campus together with students, and we lead conversations on a wide variety of topics. And that's also, an entree into thinking about how you can be a successful student at Northwestern. And I'll just close by saying many of our students who participate in these programs go on to become leaders in these programs. They have gained so much as a student themselves that they then feel they want to turn around and give back. So we feel like this is a place where people learn from their peers, they grow with their peers, and then they give back to their peers. Thank you.
Thank you. I absolutely love the programs that y'all and your office provide. I remember taking a few of them for especially some of my more rigorous STEM classes, even though, again, as you mentioned, it's not just in the STEM areas. I remember it was just so great to, my professors were amazing, very helpful during their office hours, really informative, but it was also nice to just get to hear more from from a student who's like, okay, but I took this class with this professor, and let me tell you, it gets difficult during X, Y, and Z, but here are these strategies, and let's work through this together. It was kind of nice because it also gave me an organized time for me to do my homework with another group of students in my class, meet other people. So just a big fan of all of y'all. But of course, we have our wonderful friend and colleague, Jill Schneider. Do you want to talk more about how AccessibleNU supports students at Northwestern?
Absolutely. Yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. AccessibleNU, we typically go by ANU, so I'm going to just say ANU throughout the duration of my little spiel here. But the primary purpose of a disability services office, including us here in ANU, is really to support and determine eligibility for disability-related accommodations in the classrooms, maybe in your labs, or any type of clinical settings students with disabilities may have. Depending on the institution, eligibility for these disability-related accommodations often results in some type of academic or programming or housing, sometimes some employee adjustments to ensure equal access for that person with a disability. But for ANU and Northwestern University specifically, our formal processes within ANU focus on academic accommodations for students. And we really work to educate and collaborate and consult with the NU community regarding accommodation-based inquiries. For example, there might be a department that has student programs or student-centered events, and we would consult with them to answer their questions. But again, we're really primarily focused on those classroom and lab and clinical-based accommodations. And we really do work closely with our academic affairs colleagues, including the folks in the room here today, to ensure that those accommodations are implemented. As of this past year, we do have about 1,500 students registered with ANU. I would say that approximately 90% of the students registered with us here at Northwestern have what we typically call an invisible disability. So this really means, just by looking at them, you wouldn't be able to tell that they identify as having a disability. This typically includes folks with psychiatric disabilities, such as depression, anxiety, or bipolar disorder, to any types of student or to any types of disabilities that include learning disabilities, such as dyslexia, to students with executive functioning disorders, such as attention deficit disorder, for example. We also have a number of students with health conditions or chronic health conditions, such as cancer or migraines or Crohn's disease. And of course, we have students who have who experience blindness or deafness, or folks who might have mobility impairment. So in terms of the students that we support, it really does run the gamut of students who identify with various types of disabilities. And we're really lucky to have such a diverse group of students who have chosen to identify as having disability-related needs at Northwestern. I think what I want to share next is really, how do you access services at Northwestern University? This could look a little bit different, I would say, than the K through 12 sphere. And I like to kind of break it down into three steps for students in terms of seeking services. So the first step includes students submitting an application for disability accommodation determination. And at the college level, students who want accommodations are required to request them from the institution, which looks a lot different than the high school setting, where you might have had teachers who just automatically knew from years past that maybe you had an IEP or a 504 plan, so that information was just transferred from one teacher to another. That doesn't necessarily happen in the college setting, because once you enter into the college atmosphere at this point, you would be considered an adult, and that would be private information that is up to you to present to folks if you're seeking services. And then the ANU application, of course, is just one way for students to formally put the university on alert by outlining what their disability is, or what accommodations you might be requesting in order to remove any type of educational barriers that you might be experiencing, or predicting that you might be experiencing in the classrooms or in your labs, or in your clinical settings as you come over here to Northwestern. ANU, we then ask students to submit some medical documentation from a medical provider that states what the disability is, how substantial those barriers are that you might be experiencing as a result of your disability, and then any recommended accommodations that might remove those barriers. The next piece, and this again is part of step 2, is the student self-report. And this comes in the form of an intake meeting with your ANU advisor. So when you choose to identify with us and register with AccessibleNU, you will be assigned an ANU advisor, and this person will stay with you throughout the duration of your time here at Northwestern University. So even if you go on to do graduate work with Northwestern, this is going to be the same ANU advisor that you'll be working with throughout the duration of your time with us. So we really focus on that relationship building as well. I can't emphasize enough how important the intake meeting is as a part of the process, as this really allows you as a student to share your story with us. It allows you to share what your needs are from the institution as a person with a disability. And it also allows you to exercise some of those self-advocacy skills, including how to talk with professors about any accommodation needs that you might have. And it really provides us as ANU advisors with an opportunity to get to know you better as a student, to determine what types of accommodations or even referrals or resources would be appropriate for you to ensure that you have the tools that you need to move through Northwestern University successfully. After this intake meeting occurs, accommodation eligibility is determined, and common accommodations from AccessibleNU often include extra time on exams and quizzes, a distraction-reduced environment for exams and quizzes. We might do some alternative formatting of textbooks or other print-related materials that faculty are using in their courses, and then some note-taking technology tools as well. I do want to point out that there is no true list of disability-related accommodations. All accommodations are really determined on a case-by-case basis and is totally dependent on what the student needs to remove the barriers to achieve equal access, and isn't necessarily determined by just disability type alone. So the third step is ANU will then ask students which accommodations you want in which classes, and that prompts ANU to send what we call an accommodation letter to your faculty members. And then we ask students to get in contact with these faculty members, typically within the first 2 weeks of the term, so we can make sure that the accommodations are set up quickly for you as you enter into that classroom atmosphere. And this conversation with a faculty member could last anything from 5 minutes to 15 minutes, just making sure that everybody understands how the accommodations are going to be implemented. And this, again, is really important from the self-advocacy perspective, and learning how to talk with professors in the intake meetings that you're having with your ANU advisors. A little bit more about our ANU advising staff. We do have 4 ANU advisors at Evanston, and these folks are really here to consult with students, to consult with staff and faculty regarding any questions that students have about their accommodations. We work to problem solve in collaboration with the student and faculty, or assist, and in some cases intervene on the student's behalf when it comes to the implementation of accommodations in the classroom, and especially as students and our freshmen are getting the hang of how this all looks within their first year. We do encourage follow-up with us as much as possible. That's what we're here to do, is support you all as you move through Northwestern. So I think I'll stop there. I'm seeing a couple of questions pop up in the Q&A section. But if you have any questions that you want to talk offline about, be sure to email us at accessiblenU@northwestern.edu. Again, happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. And I'll be sure to also include all of your offices and departments information, such as email addresses, social media accounts, websites, all those wonderful touch points that we have and can provide for our audience here and other future audience members who may come across this recording later on in the future on our channel, our YouTube description below. So keep an eye out for that for those who are watching live right now or later. Thank you so much, Jill. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk more about how you support students in these different capacities. I mean, in my personal experience working with AccessibleNU, it was a very wonderful and positive experience that I had. And I don't think it was until I got to undergrad and I really understood that there was a place where I could have people not only advocate for me, but then self-advocate for myself, and learn that I could even thrive more successfully than I had at the beginning of my time at Northwestern. So very eternally grateful for all the wonderful work that your office does as well. Again, especially as someone who did use those resources during undergrad. So thank you so much. Transitioning a little bit more back to our general panel here of wonderful guests that we have, I want to ask a very probably expected question that we probably get a million times a day, or has been on our minds for the past 7 months now. Crazy to think about. How exactly have you been able to move all this wonderful support that you've all mentioned to an online platform, whether it be Zoom, or how has that sort of looked like, those relationships that you fostered through, sorry, there's like a weird thing floating around in my apartment. How have you been able to still maintain these relationships with students in the support study, or, all that great stuff?
I can answer really quickly. The great thing about doing advising that's primarily focused on one-on-one conversations is that they do transition pretty easily into Zoom. We have all become very quick Zoom experts, or at least Zoom adepts. So we continue to meet with our students. We continue to email with our students. We're constantly exploring, group advising, which honestly we didn't used to do very much, but now it's become, how can we do small group advising in ways that are meaningful to try and build a sense of community through advising. So we're working on that. We're collaborating with some offices that we partner with, and just trying to keep that sense of connectedness as much as we possibly can.
Amazing. Yeah, Una, go for it.
Sure, I'd be happy to add, because this is something we, it was quite a surprise to turn around and figure that out in about 2 weeks over the spring quarter. And it went surprisingly well. And then we also figured out some things to make it go even better fall quarter. And we've run all of our programs from our one-to-one coaching to our group study groups, our tutoring sessions. And, I will say that as much as we all get fatigued by being on Zoom all the time, technology affords possibilities that, would not have been there when I was a college student. And so we've been able to continue with these groups. Students have found a great deal of value in them. And I think even more than the spring, this fall, they've been really critical, because we don't have first and second year students on campus. And so they are, starting their Northwestern career from afar and trying to figure out ways to feel connected and part of the campus. So I've really found that students have embraced the group programs and are putting forward, that effort to connect through the screen, despite the challenges. And I think we figured out ways to adapt our training to make sure our peer leaders were aware of all the tools at their disposal, the different channels to monitor, to foster communication on Zoom. So we've continued to do that, and we will as long as we need to.
Yeah, just really quickly in terms of NSFP, I know that just the nature of having a PA group is kind of nice, especially with this remote setting that we're in. Just as we're kind of transitioning and everything, having that initial community has been super helpful for a lot of students. I know we've gotten a lot of students like emailing us and saying like, thank you so much for the programs that you've put on. As well as I've heard some PAs really just emphasizing how much their students have bonded with each other, and then making like study groups from their peer advisor groups. So they'll do problem sets together, or like review material, ask questions to one another. So I think that's kind of a really good benefit to just like the PA group as a whole.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights on that. I'm glad to hear that y'all's offices are thriving in this setting. And I'm fortunate that y'all, Zoom and this remote setting is very difficult, as I'm sure you are all aware. This Zoom life is not for me for the rest of my life, but I'm glad that students at Northwestern are still feeling like supported by the wonderful services that y'all provide. Jacob, since you were the last to speak and you are the only current student on this panel, I am unfortunately going to pick on you for this specific question in a very kind way. So one of our most frequently asked questions, and that came up today in our chat, was how would you all, actually they want to hear from each of you or those willing, describe the student atmosphere at Northwestern? But I'm going to ask you, Jacob, to share insights and wisdom since you are a student at Northwestern right now.
Yeah. So I think the best way to kind of like describe the atmosphere is like everyone kind of has their passion, I would say, like something that like makes them tick, and like just something that it might not be something that you expect. For some people, it's literally like they love like the idea of creating like, I'll say like for me, like medical devices for developing countries. So like that's something that I think is super cool. And there's like a whole club that I joined for it. And so that's just been a really nice way to get exposed to other people with similar interests. So like that's kind of just an aspect of the Northwestern community that I really appreciate, is that you might not know exactly what you're interested in, but there are so many groups that have just such a wide array of interests that you can find that, as well as I would say, obviously it's a very high academic achieving school, but people are definitely willing to help. And I think that's a huge thing that I was like nervous about coming in. I was like, I feel like it's going to be competitive. And while like obviously like, there is a drive that Northwestern students all have, there are also like a cohesion of like, hey, this may be difficult, but like we're going to get through it together. And so I know that like that's helped me through a lot of classes as well. And because like obviously you're like every student has their own strength. So like I've helped some people with some classes, and then they've helped me with others. And it's just like a give and take, and like this understanding of like mutually getting through it and like walking that stage together. But yeah.
If I can just add a little bit to that, I think that's really true. And I do think engineering students often have a particularly cohesive culture because there are a lot of group projects, and it's also, you know, a very challenging curriculum, and it's mutually supportive. But just a tiny anecdote from academic support history. Until just 3 years ago, we did not have budget to pay any of the peer leaders who worked in our programs. And nonetheless, we had a thriving peer guided study group program. We had so many students who wanted to volunteer their time to help their fellow students succeed at Northwestern. And I think that says a lot right there about the culture at Northwestern. I think it is competitive, it is intense, it's hard to get through a quarter system without feeling like there's a lot of intensity involved in your academic experience. But there's also a huge desire to give back to the community and to support your fellow student, which I think is really wonderful.
I would second what Una said about the quarter system. The quarter system, you know, it is absolutely a blessing until it's not. And what's great about the quarter system, because I want to tell you how great Northwestern is you get to do so much stuff. And over the course of the year, most of our students are taking 11 or 12 courses. They're learning all sorts of different things. Our students are able to explore so many of their, as Jacob was saying, so many of their academic passions, their other passions, right? We have all of this room for you to find your way through the ins and outs of our course offerings. It's also fast. And I think that's part of why we have the support mechanisms that we have, is that we acknowledge that this system we have that lets our students explore the things they want to explore and become the people they want to become also can be challenging to navigate and to really thrive in. And we want very much for all our students to thrive.
I would just second everything that everybody has said thus far. I really see it as a problem-solving based atmosphere with our students. I think that our students have a lot of grit, especially when we're talking about the quarter system, because the quarter system, as Liz said, it's great until all of a sudden it's not. And so I just continue to be amazed by our student population every day. And, the atmosphere here just shows the camaraderie, especially as we're in this remote setting. I would say lately, it just really shows the camaraderie of students and really banding together to kind of get through this. Is that fly back in your
I don't know if
apartment?
it's a fly. I don't know if it's like
I
a
didn't
little.
know if you were waving me off to say get off.
No,
the
no,
campus
no.
already.
It's like this little thing just going around. But I didn't mean to interrupt you or cut you off. So feel free to continue if you would like to.
You're totally good.
Amazing. I don't know what's going on in my apartment. I think that my dust bunnies or something knows that I've been at home too long. But here we are. Who hasn't been? Stay at home, y'all. Stay safe if you can. I was gonna fifth, fourth, third, second, all of that. I don't know what word I was going to use to describe. I think the other thing I was going to add is I hope that you, the attendees watching this and future viewers, have gotten a sense through this wonderful panel of guests and this episode of Live from Northwestern and the other two that we've had this past week that there is no stigma around getting support and help at Northwestern. I think that, at least in my personal experience, and this is only my experience, at my old high school, it was kind of pretty competitive academically. I was very fortunate and privileged to attend a very, well-funded public school in Chicago, highly selective school, and that really had the academic resources for me to challenge myself and everything along those lines. But everyone kind of just did their work on their own. It kind of was like, well, tutoring's only for people who are really, really struggling in class, and like that shouldn't be you. But at Northwestern, it kind of, with the challenges of the quarter system, the challenges of the academic rigor available at Northwestern, and the challenges of just growing up and attending a 4-year college university, I think it really is sort of beautiful to have these different offices and advisors here to really support you and build you up and strengthen you to be able to pursue multiple passions, as multiple of you have already mentioned already, to be able to not have to, sacrifice anything along these, anything Northwestern experience, even if you come in with a learning disability. It's not a negotiation. It really is building you up to feel more supported and to thrive, and or empower one another as a peer-to-peer and the different resources and programming that we have, whether it be tutoring, peer-led study groups, having a peer advisor there for your entire first year, and also having a faculty advisor who's really there for as long as you are at Northwestern. I think that was a good way to end it, to be quite honest. So I don't want to jinx it, but I really do appreciate everyone being here today virtually. Jacob, Jill, Una, Liz, thank you so much for taking the time out of your afternoon to talk a little bit more with me and with our audience here today. I really do appreciate you being here. For the attendees, thank you so much for attending and for being here. If you're still here after the entire hour, thank you so much. If you watched even a little bit of it, thank you so much as well. You can feel free to find all the information that you need related to these offices in our YouTube description. You can also follow us, Northwestern Admissions, on social media. You can feel free to hit like on that video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, do all those wonderful things. Take care of yourselves, wear a mask, wash your hands, and as always, go Cats. Don't be strangers. Feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much, everyone.